Canada's Wonderland has finally announced their highly anticipated new for 2025 roller coaster dubbed AlpenFury. It is a Premier Rides multi-launch coaster featuring speeds over 70 miles per hour, maximum height of 164 feet, throwing riders through 9 different inversions. That is tied for the second most in North America and is the most in Canada. It also takes the record for being the tallest, fastest, and longest launch coaster in Canada. Not like it had a ton of competition, but is still a welcome sight to see. In this video, we'll walk through the layout, tell you exactly what you can expect from each element, show you where exactly it's going in the park, and also talking about the story behind the ride. Like, what exactly is AlpenFury? We'll start there. Their tagline is "Face Nature's Wrath." They're essentially furthering the story of Wonder Mountain. So basically, you have this group of villagers that live at the base of Wonder Mountain that closed off a bunch of climbing trails decades ago. Tales then began to spread of why they closed off the trails, and it has to do with these beasts and mystical forces. One legend is that at the mountain's core, fire and ice come together in this most raw elemental state that creates a powerful nature force that is both terrifying and awe-inspiring. That is word for word what they're going with here. But I guess this story has become so ingrained in local culture that the Alpen village now has a festival surrounding this mystical force. And as a visitor, you are invited to participate in the festival. So you are climbing aboard a sled that has been outfitted for a journey through Wonder Mountain, so you can see what this legend is all about. We will see how much that translates into the actual thematics in the queue and station for AlpenFury, but it's nice to see that they've at least made an attempt with theming, because as of right now, rides like Behemoth and Leviathan have like next to no story. Yukon Striker, they at least made an attempt. But this is the 4th roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland to interact with the park's centerpiece, Wonder Mountain, which is already wildly impressive. I know initially there was some speculation that when they were planning out a new roller coaster for this area that it would cause the removal of one of the pre-existing coasters in the mountain. Clearly that is not the case. You can see how they're just weaving this thing around those other rides. It is not only going to make your experience on AlpenFury, but it is also going to enhance your experience on those other attractions. When you're riding Wonder Mountain's Guardian, cresting over the lift hill, you're going to see riders passing over your heads on AlpenFury. And even for non-riders, this is going to be a huge spectacle just walking the main pathways in the park. You're going to be able to see it right when you walk in. The furthest point of this coaster, the turnaround, is going where their Sky Coaster was. They recently took that out so they can make room for this ride. It's literally to your left-hand side when you walk in. So Leviathan will be the first thing you see. This will probably be the second. But the entrance for this attraction is going to be all the way on the back right-hand side of Wonder Mountain near the Fly. That just shows you just how long and drawn out this layout is. That's quite a bit of walk to get from the furthest point all the way to the entrance. And I am just so impressed that they made room for this coaster at all. Here you can see on Google Earth what the main street looks like of Canada's Wonderland. Now here it is with AlpenFury. So they're really just taking up some greenery and throwing the coaster out over some guest areas. It'll make for some great photo ops, and the fact that we aren't losing any attractions other than the one that you had to pay for, I think is awesome. So let's walk through this layout. You're going to take a right-hand turn out of the station and start up your first launch. Now, maximum speed has not been revealed for this launch, but it's really just a boost to get you going. So I would guess maybe like 30, 40 miles per hour. And you have this slight bank as you dive sideways into the mountain. And this is where you have your main launch hitting what I assume is your top speed. We know that this coaster will max out at 72 miles per hour. It's either going to be at the end of this launch or at the bottom of the drop. Regardless, you're going to be going pretty fast here. It's going to be in total darkness. In the animation, it looks like you're going through a cave that's like the inside of Wonder Mountain. I really hope that they theme it to look like that, because you know that the inside of Wonder Mountain does not actually look like a cave. It probably looks like a bunch of ugly support beams, so I really hope that they keep up this effect. The other thing you'll probably notice with this indoor section is they are using black track instead of the white track that you have with everything else, just to help keep everything darker in there. You can literally see when the track switches colors. And I love that you're really shooting out of the mountain. You're going to be staring up straight at the sky. It's very reminiscent of what Volcano the Blast Coaster did at King's Dominion. This, more than any other ride, really is the spiritual successor of it. They're even going so far as adding a fire blast when riders emerge out the top. This isn't even a volcano, and they're still like, yeah, we'll throw in fire. The first element after this launch is this inverted top hat thing. There's really not a formal name for it, but it's certainly something we've never really seen before because it starts off like an inverted top hat, but then you rotate out where you're hanging to the side, and then you flip over into an inversion. So this is actually really two inversions in one element. The idea of this is very similar to the first big moment that you have on Max Force, where you rise up from the launch, rotate upside down, hang to the side, and then flip back over towards the ground. Max Force stands 175 feet tall, so this element is 11 feet shorter. But regardless, that is 2 inversions down, 7 more to go. As you plunge down off of your highest point, you have a technical drop of 154 feet, but it's not really going to feel like a drop. Like, don't expect any crazy airtime or anything, which is fine because you have currently in the park 3 huge B&M coasters that all have a substantial first drop. So you're not really missing out on anything here. This moment goes over top of Vortex. As you're plunging down, you're going to dive underneath the lift hill of Wonder Mountain's Guardian, threading through the supports, passing out over the pathway into a high-speed bank. You're then going to cross under a section of track that you'll pass over on the return trip, fly underneath a roll, and then bank to the right. You'll then narrowly miss another corkscrew and then change directions to the left and flip into inversion number 3. This is a 0G stall that goes out over the main pathway. This is where you would walk to get to like flight deck and time warp. I love that you're going to see riders going directly overhead. The only downside with this is if they don't have a super strict loose article policy, I fully anticipate there being some nets overhead. You know, safety first, but it does mean that the photo ops won't be quite as cool as they would otherwise. But we'll have to see. Maybe they'll end up adding metal detectors and free lockers like what they have at Steel Vengeance and Twisted Timbers. But this 0G stall is set up the exact same way as Velocicoasters, where you roll over, stall, and then keep rolling the same direction. The only difference is this is going to be higher off the ground. But I think it'll keep a similar pace through that moment. It's not going to feel like Gotham City Escapes, for example, where you really just hang there. But as you exit, this is where you hit your furthest point where that sky coaster was. It's an upwards bank to the right where you then hang out to the side and then roll over into inversion number 4. It reminds me of the treble clef turnaround on Fury 325, but it goes upside down. And this roll actually takes a very similar motion to that inversion that you have right after the first launch. It's a downward motion keeping a very good pace, and that is not the last time you're going to experience something like that. Because right after this, we're going to start our return trip. Adjacent to the stall is a double inverting roll, so you're going to rise upwards, flipping to the left, and then go downwards, flipping to the right. And as if those 2 back-to-back rolls weren't enough, you're then going to do 2 more. This time keeping the same sweeping motion, flipping you to the left, over top of the previous track both times. I love all the crossovers. I think it's super cool. But I will admit, it is a little weird that essentially you're doing 4 of the same element, maybe even 5 of the same element, depending on how you look at it, back to back to back. I worry that that is going to feel repetitive. Like, I'm sure it's a cool sensation, but do we really need that many of them? I think I would have preferred if, like, instead of one of those inversions, we threw in, like, an ejector airtime hill. Remember, as much as Canada's Wonderland needed a high-thrill launch coaster, they also really need a ride with ejector airtime. And frankly, I don't think this is it. It seemed they were so focused on breaking the inversion record that they didn't really have much room for anything else. The only silver lining will be if you actually get airtime while going through these inversions, but some of these rolls are pretty snappy. You might be moving through them too fast. I don't know how much airtime you're going to get. It might vary per element. But I'll pick back up with the rest of the layout. You're going to hop over that high-speed turn that you took at the beginning into this slightly banked hill. We'll see if you get any airtime there. Then you take this drawn-out rise up into your final inversion. This one at least flips you the other way, and I like that it does so over top of the bottom of Vortex's drop. I think that's really cool. So I like that final inversion a lot, and then you take a small double up into the brake run. So very odd conclusion here that they threw in the only traditional airtime hills at the very end of the ride. It feels a little out of place, almost like some weird no limits autocomplete scenario. I think I would have been willing to sacrifice one of those 4 inversions there on the return trip to get good airtime hill. You could even just have a traditional camelback going over that pathway next to the stall. I think that would have been awesome, and then I wouldn't mind throwing in a couple more 0G rolls. So that's my biggest critique with the layout. I mean, other than that, I'm very impressed with how long the ride is. I like that it doesn't slow down at all. There's no mid-course brake run. I appreciate the creativity in the shaping of elements. I really feel like there's no other ride out there quite like this. It's going to feel very unique, which is good for Canada's Wonderland. Because even though they'll now have 19 roller coasters, which is tied for the second most in the world, behind Magic Mountain, the same as Energylandia's, Canada's Wonderland has a lot of cookie-cutter basic rides that you can find all over, and a lot of them aren't that good. So they needed another supporting roller coaster like this. Will it be the best in the park? I think it'll depend on who you ask. I wouldn't be surprised if some people like it more than Leviathan or Behemoth. It's just different. It'll also really come down to how comfortable the trains are. Premier is not known for having very good trains. In fact, I think it's the biggest thing holding them back from being a real contender against these other big dogs like Intamin, B&M, Mach, etc. There's very little foot space for you to get into your row. Everything is just so tight and compact. It feels like they had X amount of room to work with to fit in a train, and they said, well, we want to fit in more seats, so we'll just cut out all the leg room. And it's just not fun. I know for taller riders also, the shin guards can make things not super comfortable. If the rendering that Cannon's Wonderland released is accurate, then there's a chance that we might be seeing some slightly updated trains for this coaster, but they don't look that different from their usual train setup. Like, it still looks like there's barely any legroom. I still see a shin guard. Hopefully it'll still be an improvement. It does look a bit more open feeling on the sides, which is nice, but I feel like this would have been a perfect opportunity for Premier to rebrand themselves with this huge new ride, come out with new trains. It'll get everyone's attention. I think more parks will be lining up to get Premier coasters. I think this coaster will still have a positive effect on their company. It's absolutely a good statement piece, the same way West Coast Racers was. They're really proving themselves for being the creative, oddball, high-thrill launch coaster company that parks can go to. So I'm really happy for them that they secured such a big ride, and regardless of how the trains feel, I do anticipate AlpenFury to be extremely smooth. That is something I will always commend Premier on. Their steel coasters are remarkably smooth, but you don't always get that when you go with Intamin or Mach, even though their trains are a lot more comfortable. The only other company that does steel launch coasters as smooth as Premier, honestly, is really just Vekoma. I actually think that would have been really sick to see this as a Vekoma layout, but that's okay, there'll be other opportunities. In conclusion, this is a great reason to get out to Canada's Wonderland next year. I love that we finally got an answer to that park survey that they sent out a while back that showed a roller coaster shooting out of Wonder Mountain. That was a B&M invert. They ended up going with the Premier, but they still kept the fire effect. I also love the colors that they went with. I love that it's almost identical to Alpengeist at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which, funny enough, the colors are not the only thing those rides have in common because they also share the first same 5 letters of their name. Weird, right? But let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are on AlpenFury coming to Canada's Wonderland in 2025. If you agree with the points that I brought up, and of course, stay tuned for more analyses here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.